I think Rishi Sunak lacks statesmanship, or has he already thrown in the towel before the election starts, or is it both of the above?
And are you asking this as a result of Prime Minister's questions today?
Well, just a result of what's been happening for the last few weeks. You know, not just today, but this was probably the pinnacle of what he's done.
All right, well, let's throw in what happened today as well, because we've got a text question here from Jane who says, should Keir Starmer have resisted bringing Brianna Ghey's name into his response to Rishi Sunak's criticism of his flip-flopping? Had he not done so, perhaps he would have been respected for it, even if the PM should have avoided the what is a woman topic today. Were they both quite insensitive? Wendy, let's come to you first.
Thank you, Iain. So I was in the chamber today, so I did listen to the exchange. Some of the Prime Minister's comments were probably not the comments that I would have used. I do sometimes refer to the when is a woman, when is a woman not a woman, but you have to be really sensitive, and this is about respect and using it in the right context. So I do think that the Prime Minister showed respect to Brianna Ghey's family in the initial opening response. Equally, I think when it comes to politics, the role that we all play, maintaining that respect, absolutely matters. And I think the way in which Keir Starmer conflated the two issues, I think he could have handled it better as well. I think it's a difficult situation for that family, and I just don't think that either of the leaders necessarily made it any easier on what would have been a very difficult day.
There was a Labour MP right at the end of PMQs who gave the Prime Minister essentially an opportunity to say, yeah, sorry, I got at least the tone of that wrong. He didn't take her up on it. Should he have done?
Well, that's entirely up to him. I mean, like I said, his words were his words. They weren't my words.
You sound as if you think he probably should have.
It's always really important in these situations that you read the situation and you appreciate and understand the sympathies, but sometimes and sensitivities. But equally, I know when you're in the chamber, it can be very, very difficult.
But this is the second time something like this has happened. At the end of the day, there is a family
there that are really hurting at the moment.
Absolutely. But on Monday, he took a bet from Piers Morgan, which people thought was quite tasteless, a bet for £1,000 on whether a single asylum seeker would get on a plane to Rwanda by the end of the year. And he's had a lot of flack for that. I mean, as a former chief whip, I mean, you will still be listening to your colleagues and what they're saying. I mean, are they getting a bit nervous about how he might stand up to a 6-week general election campaign if he's made these two kind of gaffes under no pressure at all?
Look, I'm not a betting woman, so and again,
well, he's not a betting man.
Those are his comments, and you know. The one thing that I would say as former chief whip, I think the language that we use in politics absolutely matters. And I think, you know, I want to see more people get involved in politics. And when I talk about equality, I don't mean just equality of gender, I mean equality of background. And if we want more politicians, people to come forward, then the way that we all act as MPs, and our language is part of that, is key to I believe, trying to work through some of the issues that we have within our Parliament.
Paul Mason.
I looked back at the coverage of Brianna Ghey's murder and...
we should say it's pronounced Ghey.
Ghey. Yeah. Brianna Ghey's murder and indeed the conviction of last week of the two murderers. And not one of the tabloids, even the ones who are very exercised by the transgender issue, described Brianna as anything other than a girl. Okay, so she was brutally murdered, and part of the motivation for one of the murderers was hatred of transgender people. And so, like you, Wendy, I think we should. What we want politicians to do is to be respectful towards issues like that. When I saw Sunak take that bet with Piers Morgan, you know, laughing again over, I'll bet you £1,000 I can get some migrants on a plane again. The last time we got some refugees on a plane to Rwanda, June 2022, they were stopped by the courts. There were several Kurdish young men who were dragged onto that plane in a state of mental distress and then chained to the floor. Now, I accept that in a fair migration system, there'll be deportations. But I just don't want politicians making jokes about stuff like that or see, the problem with what Mr. Sunak did in the chamber wasn't necessarily that he delivered the pre-planned thing about you don't know what a woman is. He's got a perfect right to do that. Is he wasn't listening when, I mean, the mood, I think you would agree, was icy. His own spin doctors sitting in a gallery were, metaphorically head in their hands, all frantically texting him. And I worry that he doesn't meet enough ordinary people, and he's not listening to the way Britain thinks about these very serious issues. Somebody's telling him, I think, and maybe not, you maybe know who it is, to be jokey. And it's not working. And I think it's undermining what Ranjit says. Does he lack statesmanship? I think it's undermining any sense of statesmanship that he currently has.
Benedict Spence.
I think if what we're pondering is the statesmanship of Rishi Sunak, I think you can say that he has not had a good couple of days, and that's just been gone over, I think, quite clearly. I would argue, simply for the point of balance, that I don't think what Sir Keir Starmer did in response was quite as prime ministerial as it could have been. And I think whilst it's entirely possible that the family might have been deeply offended by the Prime Minister's words, I don't actually think it's for the Leader of the Opposition to, in front of the nation, inform everybody that that is entirely what could be the case and to make a spectacle of it. I think that it called in that moment for perhaps a little bit of quiet restraint, or maybe just reminding the Prime Minister that the family might be there, might be listening. I think that would have been a far more sensible thing to have done. So I do think, just for the sake of balance, that's worth pointing it out. But broadly speaking, he doesn't necessarily need to worry about that because he's going to be the Prime Minister anyway. I think that what Paul has said about this attempt to get what is actually quite a prickly man to try to appear more jovial, more in touch with people, it isn't working very clearly. And I think that it appears all the more desperate amidst the backdrop of the infighting that's going on in the Tory party, setting up of new organisations. I can't remember, it's the 7th or the 8th one that was set up.
I think, to be fair, 6th.
6th. Oh, I apologise, I'm getting ahead of myself, or perhaps I've just revealed that there's another one in the pipeline. Who knows?
Scoop, Iain, you've just got a scoop.
I just think, I thought it was a very easy opportunity for Keir Starmer to not necessarily over-egg it in that sort of very typical Prime Minister's questions way. Not that I think that he was sort of the main offender in all of this. I do think it was a very poor decision to make a joke out of it, which is actually quite a serious point that the Prime Minister could have done. But nonetheless, I thought that there was a very easy opportunity to look very measured, very statesmanlike, very respectful, and I don't think he took that, frankly. And I think actually the response, if you were looking at the Labour MPs sat next to him and around him, initially, actually all of them were laughing and joking along with the Labour opposition, all apart from Angela Rayner. If you look at Rachel Reeves, she was laughing as well. It was only after he did the great big sort of Hamlet-esque outcry that everybody went, oh yes, sorry, we're supposed to be looking very serious now. And I don't think it worked.
Natalie Bennett, you don't have any of these games in the House of Lords, do you?
Well, the House of Lords has its moments, but I think, what people are looking to, I think Ranjit has, nailed this, the whole statesman issue. And I think also what Benedict said, it's the attempt to make someone who's very clearly not a man of the people, to make him look a man of the people, and that's really backfiring. And I think it's interesting, what Wendy was saying, that very much squares up with something Dahana Davidson, another Tory MP, has been tweeting, saying that it's the responsibility of politicians to take the heat out of these debates. And, this is in the context of a horrific murder, but it's also in the broader context of where hate crime against trans people in England and Wales is up 11% in the last year of figures. This is something that's an issue right across the board, and to not treat this with respect in this context really is astonishing, with, as Paul said, when you put it also in the context of that dreadful £1,000 bet. And that's something the House of Lords is very exercised about. We're next week going to be debating the Rwanda bill, and the government's going to take quite a pounding in the House of Lords on that Rwanda bill, absolutely rightly, from a lot of people concerned about the moral issue, but also a lot of the lawyers who are very concerned about the astonishing cart and horses it drives through international law.